ReZero is no stranger to good openings and endings, such as Paradisus-Paradoxum, Stay Alive, and of course, Styx Helix. P.S. You should watch my video on Styx Helix if you haven't already. Anyway, it should be no surprise that Realize meets the high bar set by its predecessors, if not exceeds them. With its clever lyrics, subtle references, and foreshadowing, we can see this displayed in the very first scene of the opening. We see a neon green butterfly fluttering before being caught by Echidna's hands, as she slowly raises her hands, releasing a couple of dozen butterflies multiplying rapidly as the title comes in. I absolutely love this scene. There are so many references here that I missed the first time I saw this opening. The first one being how Echidna catches one butterfly and it multiplying rapidly when she lets it go is referencing the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect is a term used in chaos theory to describe how a small change to a seemingly unrelated thing or condition can cause a domino effect by affecting large, complex systems. For example, if I went back in time and didn't take a month-long break and consistently upload weekly, that would make more people like and subscribe, making one of my videos one day end up on the trending page. Maybe. The way Subaru uses Return by Death, in a way, is similar to how the butterfly effect works. Subaru saving Amelia on his first day in Lagunica through trial and error with Return by Death is the small change that starts the domino effect of ReZero's story. Had Subaru not saved Amelia that day, Amelia most likely would have died and the events of the main story would not have taken place. The next reference in this scene is not that crazy, but just neat. It's Echidna's pose as she lets go of the butterfly. It's the exact same pose she makes at the end of her speech to Subaru about making a contract with her. You also can't see her eyes here. I could be mistaken, but the way I see it, it could be hiding her true intentions and saving the reveal for her sinister look later on in the season. The last thing I noticed in this opening scene is how the butterflies begin to spread and slowly start to cover the entire screen. I believe this could be referencing Echidna's heavy influence not only throughout this season, but potentially many mysteries in the story. I'll spare you the details of going into every single theory, but it's pretty obvious that there is clearly more to her than meets the eye. Given that Roswaal is so insistent on reviving her, she was also the one who created Beatrice and Puck, and that she also seems to know Amelia's parents. Moving on, we are then introduced to the remaining witches of sin, Minerva, Sekhmet, Daphne, Typhon, and Carmilla. Following them, we have the star of the show, Natsuki Subaru himself, looking more determined than ever. We then cut to Subaru starting to walk slowly, all by himself. It's also interesting to note that right behind him seems to be his Japan. This could be foreshadowing Subaru undergoing the first trial of the sanctuary. We then have a close-up of Subaru as he stops walking before looking over his shoulder. It then flashes to Subaru's parents for a split second before moving on to the next scene. At the surface, it doesn't look like there is much there, but there is a lot that we can tell just from Subaru's body language alone. He clearly looks doubtful, looking down at the floor and avoiding all eye contact, potentially referencing his inferiority complex or the cracks of his facade of being able to solve everything on his own. Further supporting this is how Subaru looks over his shoulder. It could be that he's thinking about his regrets that he has in his life in Japan, or how he's afraid of being hurt or killed. The next scene, we have Subaru walking through different memories of when he died. I believe this is referencing the second trial in the sanctuary, where Subaru relives all the times he has died and we get the infamous "Behold an unthinkable present" line. Or this simply could just be a montage reminding the audience of what Subaru has been through, because it took Kadokawa 4 years to make season 2. At the end of the death montage, we see Subaru come to a sudden stop as he looks down. We are then shown a dead Amelia's hand, which is all covered in blood. I think this is a neat callback to Subaru's first death in Lagunica. Subaru then slumps to the floor as we see both Subaru and Amelia surrounded by a lot of corpses. If you look closely, you can see the corpses of Otto, Rom, and Petra. This is just a theory of mine, but if we're going off the pattern of Subaru going through every single one of the sanctuary's trials in order, naturally it would make sense that the next trial is the trial of facing your future. We never saw Subaru take the third trial as he was mentally unable to handle the second trial. I believe this scene of Subaru being surrounded by all of these corpses is what Subaru would have been shown had he been able to take the third trial, implying the path ahead for Subaru is not going to get any easier, with Subaru breaking down into tears and biting his lips so hard that blood comes streaming out, dripping onto the floor. We are then shown the obstacles Subaru is going to be facing sooner rather than later: Mei Li, Regulus, Lei, and of course Elsa. Subaru, still in a lot of stress, begins clutching his chest as if it was being crushed by Satella's hand. In a twisted turn of events, while the white room begins to turn into an all too familiar darkish purple, the blood that dropped from Subaru's lips start to fly up towards him, as if it was playing in reverse, a neat callback to the first opening redo. Satella's shadowy hand wraps itself around Subaru, comforting him, while the blood on the floor continues to fly to Subaru before revealing her true form. As Subaru's physical wounds start to heal, Satella leans in closer within earshot of Subaru, whispering something to him, probably the words "I love you," knowing her. Subaru closes his eyes before opening them with a determined look on his face as he begins sprinting, starting a montage of deaths for Subaru. Unfortunately, there isn't much to this scene aside from showing Subaru's determination. I did try slowing down the footage to see if the deaths were foreshadowing his deaths in Season 2, and they did not match up. Except for the shot where Subaru's eyes dyed in blood, it is a reference to how Subaru gets his eye gouged out by Elsa in one of the loops later in the season. Following this scene, we have a montage of all the people close to Subaru as the deaths continue to pile up, and the strange Japanese text starts to flash in between. I really love this scene. It really hammers in how Subaru grits his teeth to try and endure all the pain and suffering to give a better future for the ones he loves and cares about. Further supporting this is how the text in this scene reads, "If it's to save you, it doesn't matter how many times I die." It's worth noting that the last person shown is Amelia before the red text "I'll die" comes up. Amelia is the closest one to Subaru and the main reason he keeps on going. This is also a neat reference to Subaru's promise to Amelia where he vowed to save her no matter what. I also believe this scene also fits in line with one of the main themes of the season and Subaru's character arc, learning to love himself and value his own life. In this season, we see Subaru view himself as a means to an end and the only person who can save everyone. Especially when he learns that his return by death ability doesn't have a limit to it. It isn't until the middle of this season that Subaru learns to share the burden and begin to value his own life. We then transition to a cool scene, where Subaru yells as he reaches towards the light. I think this scene represents Subaru's struggle and how he is desperately trying to reach the light at the end of the tunnel, being the ideal happy ending where everyone is alive. As we enter the purple light, we are greeted with the same butterflies at the start of the opening as they surround Frederica and Garfield. I really like the attention to detail in this scene. The shadows on the both of them show their transformed state and that they are caged by the sanctuary's barrier. I know. Towards the end of the season, we learn that they could leave at any time, but this opening was made when the audience is under the impression that they couldn't leave. But I think this is more to show that Garfield and Frederica are either emotionally or psychologically caged by their past trauma of losing their mom, more so Garfield than Frederica. The next shots we see contain a good amount of foreshadowing and some hidden meanings. We first see the Ryuzu clones, one of Echidna's experiments, surrounding the crystal. We then transition to the next scene where we see the three closest people to Echidna from the Amelia camp, Beatrice and Puck, her creations, and Roswell, her student. We then have a close-up on Beatrice's hand as she touches the gospel her dear mother Echidna gave her, foreshadowing Beatrice's reason for being in the Forbidden Library and her tragic backstory. We then shift to the Castle of Dreams where the tea party is held, and right before the scene ends, we see a black hand appearing, foreshadowing Subaru getting his new ability, Invisible Providence. Next we see one of the Great Rabbits, just for a split second, to not give away their true nature and role in this season, which is surprising given how much animes love to spoil in their openings and endings. Finally, in the last shot of the opening, we see the butterflies heading towards a shadow. Once we get a better view, we are able to see Echidna and her bewitching smile. Going back to how I mentioned that Echidna has a heavy influence on the events of the story and being a puppet master of sorts, this whole sequence of foreshadowing supports that as every single shot can be traced back to Echidna. Garfield and Frederica, affected by the barrier that surrounds the sanctuary which was created by Echidna. The Ryuzu clones, Echidna created them and later inhabited one of them. Beatrice, Puck, and Roswell, Echidna created Beatrice and Puck and is Roswell's beloved teacher. The Castle of Dreams and the Tea Party, Echidna created the Castle of Dreams and she was the one who prepared the tea, which granted Subaru the ability to use witch factors like Invisible Providence. The Great Rabbit, Echidna gave Roswell the gospel to follow, which told Roswell to make it snow to attract the rabbits. Behind her sly smile, Echidna is the one directly or indirectly pulling the strings, causing all of the events of this season. Analyzing this ending made me realize that Realize is a great opening, and I wish that more people talked about it. I can't wait for Season 3 to be announced. whenever that is, as it would mean that there is more of a chance that we get more banger openings like this one. Thank you for watching, and if you would like to see more anime openings and endings analyzed, leave a like or even consider subscribing. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.